All right, everybody. So welcome aboard Punk Rock MBA Live number 4. I'm Finn McKenty. That is Matt Halpern. What we will be talking about today is social media and content marketing, because so many of you have asked us about social media. This is probably the number one question that I get. I don't know if that's true for you, Matt, but that is very, very hot topic. And what we're going to be sharing is kind of a light version of some of the content from the class we're working on. It's called Sell It Without Selling Out. It is a DIY marketing class for creative professionals. So if you're a graphic designer, an illustrator, a photographer, anything like that, if you make your living off your creativity or you want to, then this class is going to help you out with what for most people is the hardest part, and that is marketing. And again, today we're going to talk about just one piece of it, which is social media and content marketing. If you like what we have to say today, then I would definitely encourage you to check out the class, which will be available for pre-order soon, because we're going to go way deeper in there. So Matt and I are going to talk for a little while, and then at the end, we will take questions. So if you have a question along the way, just add it in the comments, and we'll get to it at the end. So I guess without further delay, we can get into it a little bit. So the first thing I want to say about social media is that you do not need a big social media following to do big things. And this is, I think, like a huge pain point for so many creatives, because you see, obviously we see people on our feeds that have huge followings, and we feel like if we don't measure up to those people, that that we're doing something wrong. Like the leaders in the fields that we follow, they've all got big followings. So if I want to be successful, I need a big following, right? Not true. You absolutely do not need a big social following to do big things. There's just It's great if you happen to have one, and if you want to do that, you can. We're going to help you out with some tips on that later, but you definitely do not need a big following. It's about quality, not quantity. So think about it. Let's say you're a videographer, right? Let's say that you make videos. What good does it really do you to have 500 kids from Croatia or something following you? No offense to any of our fans out there in Croatia. We love you. But that kid in Croatia is not going to hire you to make a video, right? And probably his friends aren't either. So other than the fact that it's a nice ego boost, it's not really needed in order for you to get the opportunities that you want. What you need is to be on the radar of the right people who will be able to give you those opportunities, and there are not very many of them. So if you're a video director, how many people are there in your space that realistically are going to give you the opportunities that you want? It's probably a couple dozen at most, maybe 100, maybe 200. That's it. These creative fields are not big. They're small worlds, and so if you are feeling stressed out and pressured because you feel like you have to have a big social media following, don't worry about it. Just worry about getting the right people, following the right people, getting them to follow you back, and having a conversation with them. That is what you need to do. Just focus on quality, not quantity. There's lots of people that we both know that do super cool stuff that don't have big followings. An example would be like Alex Wallaber, who is doing the promo videos for this course and has done a ton of stuff for Periphery, for Get Good Drums, for Horizon Devices, for some NFL athletes. He does lots of work for the NFL, so he's doing really cool shit. And, he's got a couple thousand followers on Instagram. Because it doesn't matter if he's got a million random people. What matters is that he has the attention of the people who can give him opportunities, and he does have that. So that's kind of the first thing that we wanted to get out of the way, which is that you don't need a big social following. You just need to focus on quality and then do the right things with the people you do have in your following.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll talk about the specifics of what we would consider content marketing and utilizing your socials through content marketing in a second. But what we really wanted to cover before we get to that point are some pretty obvious and pretty simple do's and do nots of utilizing your social media. So here's a few do's and some examples. So I would say post your work as often as you want. It's your choice whether you want your feed to be all about your work, about your life, or a mix of both. For me, I really like to mix it up because I think it's very important to show people the reality of what I'm all about, to let people that do follow me, that are interested, into my life. So, on one day I will post a video of me drumming and performing with the band on stage, and it gets a lot of attention. But in the same light, recently I just bought a house, and I posted a picture of myself and my girlfriend standing outside the lot where we'll be building the house, and it got a ton of attention because it's a true, real life sort of milestone that I was able to reach, and I consider it an accomplishment, and I wanted to share it with everyone. And that's a very positive thing that people respond very positively to. So I think whatever you post about, make sure it's real, make sure it's authentic. Don't be afraid to bring people into what you're doing. And again, it is okay to share your work. Another do, which is very important, is to have fun. As long as you aren't being offensive with that fun, then don't worry about turning anyone off. Not everyone is going to like you, and if you're doing things right, you probably are going to create some enemies, or people are going to unfollow you. There are a lot of people probably on a daily basis who unfollow me because maybe they just don't really like the content that I'm posting. My podcast isn't for everyone. Posting pictures of my dog isn't for everyone. There are people who literally only follow me because they care about my drumming, and that's it. So, when it comes to the general public, they're either going to follow me or they're not, but I can't really service those people based on what I think they want to see. You really just have to have fun and be yourself. Just don't offend anyone. And remember that if you're posting your work for the purpose of getting a job or getting hired, that people will hire you, whether they like you and if they don't like you, they're not going to hire you. They're not going to be upset about you posting things that are relative to your life, as long as you aren't offensive. So be mindful of what you post, and realize that if you're being authentically yourself, respectfully, you're still going to get the hires and the jobs and so forth. Another big do is to participate in other people's feeds. So it's okay to comment and like things, share other people's posts, get involved in conversations. Oftentimes, if you do that, those same people will do the same for you. It builds the engagement. It gets people interested in what you're talking about and in what you're sharing. And it's just a nice way to kind of toss the ball over the other side of the net and have them toss it back to you. So that's definitely something. And make sure that the things that you comment on, get involved with, you're actually interested in. The people that you follow should be people that you're actually interested in. Don't follow people and comment just to kind of get attention from someone that you think is cool. Follow people and get involved with things that you actually care about, because then the conversation will truly be more authentic. Now, here's my one big don't that I see a lot of, which is, do not rant or complain or talk about things negatively on social media. It's just not a good look. People don't want to hear that. There's enough negativity in the world that you don't need to add to it, and it doesn't do anything for your personal following that follows you because of your personal life, and it definitely won't do anything for your career. If a company that could hire you, or a client that could hire you, is seeing that you're constantly negative and constantly posting things that aren't even offensive but are just bringing other people down, you're probably not going to kind of be on their good side, and they're not going to be excited to work with you, because the tone that you're giving off is that you're just kind of a bum out, and that you're not really a positive person to be around. So simply don't put anything negative on your socials. It's just not the place to do it. If you need to rant or complain, call a friend, vent to them, but please don't do it on your public feed. Don't look for people to pat you on the back and, kind of give you that positive reinforcement if you're posting something negative. It doesn't really stick. So that's my advice for the do's and don'ts. And I think at this point, we actually want to get into the specifics of content marketing. So Finn, do you want to kind of introduce that topic and kind of explain, what kind of content and why we should be putting content out there?
Sure. So, as we said, you do not need a big social following, but if you do decide that you want to go all in on social media. If you do decide that you want to build yourself up as, a thought leader, if you and generate a big audience, we think that the best way to do that is with content marketing and sharing those assets on your socials. And we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. But basically content marketing, you may have heard this word, but it's very simple. It just means putting out free stuff in order to build your audience and authority. It's an opportunity for you to share stuff, to, as we say, give, ask. And then so you give a bunch of value in advance, and then once you've earned people's trust, then you can ask for something. So an example that Matt shares a lot, which I think is a really good one of this, is Tim Ferriss. So you guys may know him. He's a really successful author. I think he just got his 4th book on the New York Times bestseller list. He has a podcast that's been downloaded 200 million times, I think, and he never or almost never promotes any of his stuff on the show. He promotes his guest stuff. He promotes, events that they might be doing, but he never asks you for anything on his show, except, once every year or two, he'll ask you, and he actually calls this out. He says, hey guys, I rarely make a direct ask, but today I do want your help. I've got a new book that's out. Could you please go pre-order it on Amazon? Because then it will, be on the bestseller list, and that enables me to help bring you more podcasts like this one. So that's the way to think about content marketing, is you're going to give tons and tons and tons of value so that you build trust, you build authority, you build an audience, so that then when you ask, they are more inclined to say yes. So that could be anything from a video to podcasts to blogs to, a free download of whatever it is that you do. Like anything that you give away for free is an example of content marketing. So some other common ones would be like an email newsletter. So again, like Tim Ferriss has his 5 Bullet Fridays email newsletter. If you put out tutorials or infographics or profiles on people you work with, any of that stuff that you put out there for free is content marketing. One example of this that I like a lot is a woman named Mary Zimmer, who's actually in the Punk Rock MBA group. If you're watching today, Mary, hello. Thank you for being part of the group. So Mary teaches voice lessons for singers and screamers. So, a lot of the bands you guys listen to, she's probably worked with them. And the challenge there is like, how are you going to get on the radar of these people? Well, the way that she does it is by putting out tutorials on YouTube. You can check out her channel. It's called Voice Hacks. So she'll put out these tutorials on YouTube of how to do various different kinds of screams. And you watch that tutorial and you go, wow, that was really helpful. Well, man, if her free video is this helpful, then imagine how good her classes that she charges for must be. So that's like a simple example of how content marketing would work for someone who's providing a creative service. And Matt, I know you've had a lot of success recently. You've experimented with a lot of stuff, and you've had some recent successes.
Yeah, definitely. So, I'm always messing around with different forms of content to put out there. And it's widely known at this point that visual, specifically video and audio, is best for, the engagement that you're looking for. So, whether it's putting out, videos of what you do. So specifically for me, I've been posting videos of me drumming with the band, in my own practice space. And those kinds of posts really do get the best engagement. And I'm seeing that the more of those kinds of videos that I put out there, the more followers I get, the more engagement there is, the more comments, the more questions, and it's all free entertainment, basically. My podcast is another form of content that I'm putting out there that I'm sharing clips from via my socials, and that gets good engagement as well. Now, it's definitely not as good as maybe what I'm doing with the drumming stuff, because the majority of my following is probably comprised of drummers rather than podcast listeners, but I'm hoping to convert some of those people, and I'm still following sort of the best practices by putting out audio examples of the podcast, because audio, again, just like video, is a great way to capture people, and it's definitely working really, really well right now for me. And Finn, you mentioned Tim Ferriss. At this point, he's really very successful with his podcast. But prior to him podcasting and putting out books, he was also a big blogger. And many large-scale bloggers like Tim are now sort of migrating over and shifting to either video or audio. And most of the time, they're combining the two. So most of the big podcasters you see now will, they'll put out their podcast on all the relevant channels, but then they'll also put up the podcast on YouTube. You can consume the media that way. So seeing the conversations happen oftentimes is even better than just listening to it, depending on where you are and where you consume your media. But the point is, the big people that really do have the audiences that are trying to learn and take in information are migrating over to ways to utilize visual, video, and audio. Now, if you are one of these people out there who has never been in front of a camera, who has never really recorded their voice, maybe you are afraid to be on camera, or like most people, maybe you hate to hear your voice on a recording, which is extremely common. A couple things. One, if you really want to do that, if you want to get in front of the camera, practice. Do short little videos. You can even just, utilize Instagram and say good morning to people every day just using your phone. That's a good way to start with this. And that'll really get you sort of more comfortable with recording video and audio, saying hello to people, getting responses, hopefully getting people to watch. But what I was going to say was, if you really don't want to be on camera, if you don't necessarily want to even record your voice, you can do super effective videos without being on screen at all and without even recording your voice. You can type all of the content and all the information that you want and then have a bot read it back. And then you can sort of, do infographics or info video, screen sharing, things like that to present whatever it is that you want to present via your socials or through the content that you're trying to put out there. Finn, I know you've actually seen quite a bit of this. There are some fairly popular, is it recording or design YouTube channels that there's no video of a person, there's no audio of a person. It's just literally like a bot and some screen sharing, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, I just watched one this morning. It was like I think it was like 9 graphic design trends you'll see in 2018 or something like that, and it was just a slideshow with like music, and it was on YouTube, and I'm sure they put it on Facebook and stuff like that, and those do great. You can also think of there's a lot of YouTube channels that you can think of where it'll just be somebody talking over footage of whatever it is, or photos. Like there's one I like, it's like a fitness channel called Nick's Strength and Power, and every video he does, his face is in maybe 1 out of every 20 videos that he does. Most of it is just him talking about some specific bodybuilder, and the imagery is just, pictures or video of them that he's pulled off the web. So the point is that you can tap into the power of this stuff without ever appearing on screen, without necessarily even having your voice on screen. Although I do think, look, I absolutely hate being on camera. I hate talking. But every time I do it, I get a little bit less insecure about it. So you can do it without appearing on camera or without being recorded, but I think that you should challenge yourself to put yourself out there anyway. What's the worst that's going to happen? It's not like anybody's going to laugh at you and be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Who told you could be on camera?" It's not going to happen. So push yourself, to get outside your comfort zone if this is something you're excited about. I guarantee you it'll be worth it. So, like, as one example of that, Matt was talking about how he's gotten a lot more engagement from doing video, and the same is true for me. I've been writing as a blogger for over 10 years now. I've written thousands of blog articles, but as we said before, blogs are way less relevant now than ever. I mean, just people don't read that much, especially on the web. It's like YouTube and Facebook is what people are after. So in maybe October or something like that, I started doing videos, and I get literally 10 times more response from those videos than I ever did even from a popular blog post. So you can blog if you want, anything can work, but man, I would just really encourage you to find a way to do video and audio, even if you're insecure about it. I think you'll be happy that you did.
Yeah, and I've seen, Finn, like for you personally, I've seen such a huge improvement from the first videos that you started putting out to now. Your confidence is much stronger, and I think that it's been good for people to see what you look like. When you were just blogging, you were kind of anonymous, except for to your friends and people that knew you personally. But seeing your passion, seeing that you really do know what you're talking about, and that you're doing it with confidence, definitely makes a big difference. And as I was saying before, just showing yourself on video and letting people hear your voice and see your emotion is really the most authentic way to engage with people. And again, I have to just drive that buzzword home of authenticity. You have to be yourself on socials, just like you would want to be in any networking scenario, or when you're meeting someone that's important to your life, or just meeting new people. Be yourself. And don't be afraid to put yourself out there, especially nowadays when video and audio is really the main sort of content that is going to engage with people and connect with people.
And remember, you don't have to be PewDiePie. You don't need 500 million views on every video. You just need to connect with the people you want to connect with, which could be 50 people. There's no point in comparing yourself to somebody whose goal is to become a famous YouTuber, unless your goal is also to become a famous YouTuber, which I don't think it is. So
right.
Anyway, the point of all that is, like, put yourself out there. It's okay to be insecure and scared about it. I'm nervous about it every time I do it, but push through it, do it anyway, and you'll get less nervous every time, and I think you'll be happy with the results.
For sure. So Finn, why do we do content marketing? Are there like obvious reasons and non-obvious reasons?
Yes. So the obvious one, as we've talked about, is to grow your audience, get more followers, have conversations with people who are sharing and commenting on your stuff. You can turn those into email addresses, like, hey, click here to get my free video. Just give me your email address and I'll send it to you. There's all that stuff, which I think is pretty obvious. But there are also some non-obvious reasons, which I think are actually more valuable for most people, because again, our goal is not just to build a huge audience, unless you want to be famous, which I don't think you do. It's not just about traffic and downloads and engagement and all those numbers. The content marketing is a great kind of backdoor way of working with influencers and building relationships with them and their teams and other people who it might otherwise be difficult to get access to. And this is like such a ninja move that I think very few people take advantage of. Well, I'll just quickly, let me just make sure that I'm clear about the, kind of thought leadership thing. You may have heard people talk about that before. Thought leadership just means establishing yourself as an expert in a particular field. So, Matt would be a thought leader in the world of drumming. There are other people who are thought leaders in videography, in graphic design, in, apparel, whatever it is. So if you want to build authority, if you want to become a thought leader, put stuff out that other people will consume, put stuff out that will help them get better at their craft, and then they will begin to regard you as an expert. So if you're putting out tutorials, that's to me, one of the best ways of doing content marketing. Put out educational content. I've done tons of that. That's what we're doing right now. And then your peers will start to regard you as, an authority among your peers. And then the people at the next rung above will go, hey, well, the guy's starting to make some noise. And then eventually clients will hear about it, and then it will lead to work. And so as Matt said, now imagine when those clients call you, instead of just being a name on a website or a business card, they've seen your voice or they've seen your face 10 times, and they've heard you talk for an hour. So before you even set foot in their office, they already know you. And think about how powerful that is. That you've established yourself as a human being. They feel like they know you, even though you've never talked to them before. And we're going to be way, 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 way more likely to work with people who we already know than strangers. So one example of how I've seen this play out a lot in the design world is, in design, there's always like a handful of like hot designers who are at the front of all the trends. And so, when you're starting a project and you're pulling inspiration, like, hey, let's pick direction here. You guys pick some stuff that you like, and we'll go over it and see what we want to do. Now, imagine if the boss, the creative director or whatever, sees that the designers are always pulling work from this one guy or girl, and they see this happen on 6 projects. They're going to go, man, who is this person? Like, she's really making some noise. I got to check it out. And then, so now that person is authority in the eyes of the creative director, and they might go, man, let's just hire her to do this. And so that's how this content marketing would actually lead to client work, if that's what you want to do. Now, another one, which Matt has done very well, is using these things as a way to build relationships with people.
Yes. And, you know, I go all the way back to when I was doing the band happy thing and talk about having credibility and establishing myself as whether it's a thought leader or just being an authority in a certain area. When I would go pitch different artists, different teachers, and try to explain to them the importance of teaching and getting more involved with working with their fans through music education, the fact that I was doing it myself, the fact that I was an established teacher, and the fact that I was actually performing and touring in a band and was a peer amongst these people really gave me a big step ahead in solidifying that relationship and making people feel comfortable enough to talk to me, knowing that what I was doing, you know, was authentic. And there's that word again. But looking at it more broadly, you know, as Finn said, if you can establish yourself as someone who is putting out great content, perhaps you are a thought leader, perhaps you're educating people through your socials, you know, then people that you want to work with are going to respond to that. And what's really cool about it is oftentimes many of the people that you might go to like pitch or try to sell them on something, which we talked about in the networking webinar, you really actually can use content in a way that allows you to sort of surpass that and approach these people from a much, in my opinion, better or from a better angle. So as an example, so I have a podcast, and I've been able to work with so many people who might think that I'm trying to pitch them, or maybe they're used to people trying to sell to them all the time, you know, when they approach them. I've been able to work with these people and approach them by simply saying, hey, I want you to come talk about what you do, talk about yourself, and do it to my audience. That's such a great way to connect with someone that is, you know, either really big in your vertical, someone who, you know, you could maybe work with someday, or someone that you think could really offer a lot of information to the audience that you've built that is extremely valuable. Now you get to that. Now you get to talk to that person for an hour or more, interview them, extract information, and then by the end of that conversation, hopefully what you've done there is you've hit off and struck up a really good relationship that can then go from there. If you do a really good job with it and the content is great, hopefully that person is going to share that podcast or share that interview with their own following. And they're going to expose you to new people just like you're exposing them to new people. So it's a really nice symbiotic relationship from that standpoint. And again, because you've had a really good conversation with that person, it opens the door up for the potential sale or for the potential pitch later. And once you both know what you're doing, you know, if the person you're interviewing gets to learn about you through the process and you learn about them, it's going to be a pretty obvious thing that occurs where you say, you know what? You know, one person says, hey, I like what you're doing here. I think we could work together on this. And the other person says, yeah, you know, I really like what you're doing. We should work together. And you won't have to do the sales call, the sales pitch. It will happen much more naturally and organically. So utilize things like that. If you have access to people, invite them on to share what they know to help educate others, and it will in turn help you, and you can in turn help them. That's what I would really say about building relationships in that regard.
So like one example of this that I noticed recently, there's a podcast I like called Adventures in Design. It's a graphic design podcast. And most of them are your typical like interview format, and he'll bring on, you know, a friend of his that's a designer. But recently they had on the global creative director for Adidas. Now, you can't get, you know, time with this guy. Like, that's just not going to happen. If you're a designer, you can't just call, I don't know, his name is Paul or something like that. Like, you can't just call up and say, hey, can I talk to Paul? Like, no. The answer is no, you can't talk to him. But here's a way that this guy, the host of this podcast, got to sit down with him for an hour and talk about design. Like, how valuable is that opportunity? Now, it's still probably going to be hard to get this guy even on a podcast, but it's going to be way easier to get these people on a podcast to talk than it is, like, you know, to do the, can I sit down and have coffee with you and pick your brain? Like, you know, that's not a good way to approach somebody like this, because to them that's annoying. But, hey, I would love to sit down with you on my podcast and pick your brain. Well, that's a different pitch. So the angle of using content marketing as basically an excuse or a reason to sit down with these people who otherwise would be hard to reach is a super powerful one that I never hear people talking about. But it is opened so many doors for me. Like so even if you're only getting 500 people listening to your podcast, like so even if the audience is small, if it is the doorway to, a new relationship every week with your guest, that is worth it alone, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. We, with the Chocolate Croissants podcast, which is my podcast, we've been consistent in releasing episodes once a week, every week. And the amount of positive relationships that the three of us, me and my two partners, have been able to foster through that, it's invaluable. And I can't tell you how much it's helped expand our network. At the same time, it has truly helped a lot of people. And that should be also the bedrock of why you're choosing to interview someone like that, or why you're choosing to share information via a type of medium like a podcast. It's to educate, to entertain, to positively impact someone's life. So you really can't go wrong. You just have to kind of know why you're doing it, and make sure that, again, it's something that you're passionate about and that's authentic. So with that in mind, let's get into the question of, should you really double down on content marketing? And here's what we say about this. So do it if you can do it yourself, because it's not something that you want to pay someone else to do at this point. It's extremely expensive. And, if you're really trying to take it from the angle of, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I'm passionate about, no one can do that better than you. Other people won't do it right unless you're micromanaging them, and that's just a whole time suck. And you don't want to get into that game, but you do want to be passionate about it. It's a lot of work. So don't just do it because you feel like you should, or because we're telling you, content marketing and utilizing social media is going to be good for your business. Do it because you really care, and because you think it's fun, and probably because it's going to, in some ways impact people's lives positively. And I know I keep saying that, but I have to reinforce, it's so important to think about what you put out there and how it can affect other people's daily life. If you can affect it positively, that's worth doing, but you have to be passionate about that. And then also, look, if you're really good at recording content, putting out content, or you want to be, then that's awesome. But if you're not good at it, unless you have this really, really huge urge to learn, to get better, then maybe don't do it, because you don't want to butcher it. You don't want to ruin your chances. You may do more harm than good. So there are tons of other ways to network, to reach people, to build the relationships that you're talking about. It doesn't only have to be through content marketing. So be honest with yourself there. But the biggest thing, and this is even something that I'm going through right now regarding my podcast, and my partners will tell you how much I harp about this. I see Justin in here now, and he can comment about this if he wants to. But, good content marketing really takes a huge time investment. It's a lot of work. It's more than you probably think. So as an example, if I release with my partners an hour-long podcast, it's not just that hour of the podcast itself that I'm working on it. It's probably 10 plus hours of total in a week if we want to do it right. That's 10 hours divided amongst 3 people. But you know what? Even with 3 of us, we can't get all of that done. We still want to get better at it, and we still need to find time to put in the effort to make it as good as it possibly can be. So unless you truly have a plan, unless you're really willing to invest in and take the time that it's going to take to do it right, then don't do it. But if you answer, yes to all of these points and you feel like you're ready to go, then by all means, put out that content, because it's probably going to be pretty awesome and pretty inspiring for people.
For sure. So before we move on to the next part, which is I'm going to talk about just the specifics of how you're going to distribute this stuff on social media to kind of connect all these things together. This would be a good time to put your questions in the comments if you have any. So just drop it in the comments in this video, and we'll get to it in a little bit after we're done with this section. And then B, just wanted to kind of close the loop on a few things that we talked about there, which is, again, make sure that if you're going to do content marketing, have a specific goal and a plan for it. Don't just do it because you think it would be cool to do a podcast, because as Matt said, it is a lot of work to do it right. Also, remember that to be most effective at this, it's got to be good, because there's so much free content out there. It's okay if you're not good right out of the gate. I don't think really anybody is, but you do have to strive to be great. Even if you never get there, you've got to have that desire to be really good, or this stuff really just isn't going to do anything for you. You've seen, you ever look at a company's blog and it's just the most boring shit that you're like, why in the world would anybody ever read this? Why do they even bother doing this? Exactly. Why would anybody bother? Nobody cares about putting out crappy generic blogs, so just don't bother doing it unless you have a desire to be good. And then lastly, on the topic of using these things as a networking vehicle and a way to build relationships, that is great. But the one caution there is you got to be genuine about it. Don't disguise a sales pitch as a podcast, because that will piss people off and it will do you way more harm than good. If people are like, wait a minute, this fucker just called me up to be on his podcast, but really he's trying to sell me something. Fuck this guy. Bad move. So what you should only work with people who you genuinely want to talk to, because you're passionate and excited about what they're doing. And if that comes across, it will lead to opportunities, but don't try to sneak a sales pitch in there.
Amen.
Yes. Bad news. So then I just wanted to, the last part is get into the details of specifically how content marketing and social media work together. So again, like we said before, you don't need to have a big social following. You don't need to invest a lot of energy in it. But if you've decided that you do want to, in my opinion, the best way to use your social media is to distribute all these content marketing assets that you have. So just think about for each thing. Gary Vaynerchuk does a great job of this. I think he's probably the best in the world at this. Think about the anything that you make. There's a primary format of origin for it. So let's say it's a podcast. The podcast is the thing that the primary thing that you make, and then you're going to make lots of derivative versions of that, lots of little clips and other pieces of content from that big thing that you're going to share on social media. So the goal is basically you're going to talk about the same thing that you're doing. So you're going to talk about this podcast in 10 different ways on all your different social platforms in ways that feel native to that platform. So obviously you can't put a podcast on Twitter. Well, what can you put on Twitter? Twitter will let you upload 45 seconds of video. So you could, if you record the podcast and video, you take a 45-second clip of the guest saying something really impactful and you put it on Twitter. Or if you don't record video, maybe it's an image quote. If they said something really cool that's 5 or 6 words long, you make a big bold image out of that, and you can put that on Twitter, on Facebook, and on Instagram. So you made this podcast, and now you just made an asset from that podcast that you can share on 3 different platforms. Ideally, you want to make one asset that you can share in lots of different places. If you were to do, let's say that you were doing a photo shoot, if you had a clothing company and you were doing a photo shoot, what are the different ways that you could share that photo shoot? So the primary asset would be the photos themselves, but you could also do a Facebook live stream or Instagram live stream of the photo shoot happening. You could have behind the scenes video where the photographer explains how he or she did it and put that on YouTube or Facebook. You could have quotes from the people who were at the photo shoot, put all that stuff out there. So again, the idea is just that for everything you make, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube video, whatever it is, there's the big thing, and then how do you take little chunks of that so that you're getting the most mileage, the most bang for your buck, because it's very time consuming to make these things. How do you get the most bang for your buck? And you can keep sharing these for months. If you do a podcast with, somebody popular tomorrow, you're going to share that next week, but you don't have to stop sharing that. In fact, you shouldn't. You should be sharing those for months and months, or maybe even years. If people like the quote once, they're going to like it probably again and again and again. And as any of you have experienced that do this stuff, like your organic reach is not very good. So, if you've got 10,000 fans and you share an image, probably, maybe 1,000 of them are going to see it if you're lucky. So you should share that thing several times because you're going to get, there's plenty of people who never saw it. It will be new to them. So that's kind of how to connect these two things of like social media and content marketing. And that's also, like Matt said, why it's so time consuming to do this stuff. So not only, let's think about a podcast as an example. First, you have to book the guest, right? And you have to coordinate everybody's schedule, which is fucking annoying, right?
Takes forever. Yep.
Super annoying. So before you even press record, you've probably got several hours into this thing just from, coordinating everybody's schedules, right? So then the next thing you have to do is record the podcast, which is actually the easiest part of the whole thing. Then you got to have somebody edit and mix it and make a graphic for it and upload it to iTunes and SoundCloud and all that, and maybe upload it to YouTube, wherever you put it.
Yep.
Then
got to record the intro, got to record the outro.
Right. Exactly. And edit all that stuff together, mix it, maybe change, maybe, oh, fuck, I chopped off this word, I got to fix it. Then you have to make, and so now, after all this time, you've made one podcast. Now you have to make all these other little assets out of it. So somebody's got to listen to it and pick the quotes that you're going to share. And then somebody's got to actually edit those and make an image for each one of them and put those up, schedule them on social, all this stuff. So I'm by no means trying to talk you out of doing this. I just want to make sure you understand that it's very time consuming to do this stuff and do it well. However, I do believe, again, if you have decided that you want to invest in social, if you want to be, a thought leader, an influencer, if you want to build a brand on social, it's worth the effort to do it right, because there's no point in doing a podcast if you only talk about it once. If you guys have all experienced this, if you make a podcast and all you do is throw it on iTunes and that's all you do to promote it, nobody's going to fucking know about it unless you're Tim Ferriss, who has already invested tens of thousands of hours in building a following. So if you're going to do this stuff, you got to also take on the commitment of promoting it in all these different ways as well.
Yep. Amen. I'll say it again.
Alrighty. Well, we only have one question today. I'm very disappointed. I was hoping we would get more questions, but first one is from Clifton Miles. Hey, Clifton, thank you very much for joining us today. He is a URM member, big fan of Clifton. His question is it possible to give away too much content? There's probably a couple different ways that could be interpreted. The way that I think he means it is, can you give away the secrets when you're doing this content marketing and you're, putting out like educational stuff or a sample of a product or something? Should you be worried about giving away too much? What do you think, Matt?
I think there's a nice balance, but overall, I would say give as much as you can. Not everybody in the world is going to be able to, consume the media or the content that you're putting out there in the instant that you do. So, I don't think that there's that big of an issue with sharing secrets and putting it out there because one, you're only going to reach a limited audience with it at any given time. But two, there's always going to be more questions. There's always going to be more conversation to be had about it. So as far as I'm concerned, even look at what we're doing with these webinars. We are talking about topics here in these free webinars that we're also going to be diving into in our course that Finn mentioned at the beginning of this. That's going to be called "Sell It Without Selling Out," which is it's a DIY marketing course for creatives. We're going to be talking about these same topics. We're going to be sharing even some similar stories, if not some of the same ideas here. If we worried about whether or not you guys were going to buy that course because it's going to be helpful versus just taking these classes here, then we probably wouldn't do these courses. But I think it's actually really important for us to give examples and real examples of what kind of stuff we're going to be talking about, because hopefully this stuff is genuinely helpful, and hopefully you can see that there will be more helpful stuff that comes out actually with the other content that we're going to be releasing in the class itself. Now, we're not doing everything that there is here in these free webinars, but it is a nice big bulk chunk of stuff, and hopefully, again, it's a nice precursor to the deeper content and the deeper conversation that we'll have in the course itself. Does that make sense to you, Finn?
Yeah, totally makes sense. And I guess I would have two things to add, to piggyback on that. One is that if your so-called secrets can be, given away in a 5-minute video, then maybe they weren't that valuable to begin with, right? Like if someone can watch a 5-minute video and they just took everything that, everything valuable that then maybe it wasn't really that valuable. So I don't think you need to worry about that. Second thing is, I've never once, I've been doing this for a long time and I've done a lot of content marketing for many, many, many years. I've never once said myself or heard anybody say, "Oh, fuck, we gave away too much." I've never heard that. Like, this is just not a thing. The way it works is that if you give away great free stuff, then people go, man, if their free stuff is that good, imagine how much the content that they charge, imagine how good the content is that they charge for. That's the way it works. So I wouldn't worry about that. I mean, it is possible, I suppose, but I think it's pretty rare, and I wouldn't worry about that too much.
So there's a question here as a follow-up from Elon where he says, how do you decide what part is free versus what part should go towards the paid course? Is there a clear line or clear division? So Finn, what do you think about that?
Yeah, so basically the way that I would think about this, and this is true of a product demo or anything that you do, if it's content marketing, you want to give them enough so that like they're stoked, but then want more. So like, imagine, like, to use a metaphor, imagine that it's like a test drive on a car. Like, let them drive it far enough, they can drive it on the road a little bit, they can drive it on the freeway a little bit, and they're like, ooh, this feels good to drive this thing. And they're like, okay, well, we should probably turn around and go back to the lot now. And you're like, fuck, I really want to drive this thing more. So think about your content that way. So like for this course, for example, we're basically going to do one of these webinars for maybe not every section in the class, but a lot of them. And we're giving you, the highlights of each of those sections. There's more depth that's in there that we just can't get into in this format, but you're getting the highlights of it. So if you're the kind of person that you think that would be interested in this, then we think you're going to go, man, this sounds good. I need to dig deeper in this. I better buy the course. So that's how I think of it, like the car test drive, make their mouth water, and then pull it away from them right when they want to take a bite of it.
There you go. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Question from Bill Kamek. Hey, Bill, thank you very much for joining. Been seeing Bill's name around online for a long time now. Appreciate all the support. Can your overly negative online persona backfire on you in your IRL personal and professional life?
Yes.
Can and will.
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. So avoid it like the plague. I don't know how to drive this point home harder. There is no reason ever to be negative online unless someone is putting out extremely offensive, truly illegal or damaging content, and you're trying to share something like that to create awareness to make it stop. I mean, that's the only time I could ever think of like sharing anything that has a negative connotation whatsoever is to put an end to it. There's just nothing good about it, and that goes with in real life too. It's like, stop complaining about things. Stop looking for this positive reinforcement and positive feedback from other people. Put things out there. Share what is important to you, because it can either benefit the world positively because you're passionate about it and you want to genuinely offer it to other people, or you simply just want other people, as hippie-ish as this sounds, you simply just want to help people have a good day. There's no reason in posting something negative about yourself, in dragging other people down, in being offensive to other people. It's pretty common sense, in my opinion. I don't know. What do you think, Finn? It just seems ridiculous to me to put out anything negative in a forum where your peers, your friends, your family could see it. It absolutely can affect you negatively.
It for sure will, and I want to add something to that. I agree 100% with all that. And here's the thing that a lot of these negative people don't realize is that you're getting silently destroyed behind the scenes and you don't know it. So let's say that I posted something on my Facebook that's like, fuck this company and everyone that works there because blah, 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 blah. There's going to be some people that will show up there and give me a bunch of positive feedback on that. Like, yeah, fuck those guys. You're right. Thanks for calling them out. Rah, rah, rah. So there's going to be 10 people on there or 50 people or whatever that are giving me a pat on the back for being negative. But then there's going to be 100 people that are watching from the sidelines going, what are you, like, whoa, what's wrong with this guy? Like, calm down. They're not going to say anything. So you're going to be tricked by getting some positive reinforcement from some other people, but the people who really matter are saying it silently to themselves or to their peers behind the scenes. They're texting a screenshot of it to, your friends going, well, what's wrong with Matt? Why is he going off about this shit? Like, okay, let's not work with him. That totally happens. This happens all the time to both of us and our friends. We screenshot this stuff and share it with everybody, and it's not like we're blacklisting people or something like that. It's just like when you're thinking about who to work with, if someone's constantly like negative on social media, you don't want to work with them because you might be next. What if they think that, they get the idea that somehow you've wronged them and you're the next person that's the subject of their public rant? Nobody it's just unpleasant to be around those people. So that's the really tricky thing about being negative online is that is that the damage is done and you don't even know it.
Absolutely.
Question from Jeremy Schultz. May I ask you what platform you are using to host your course? I'm using Teachables for my teacher training program. It's pricey, and I'm just wondering what direction you all are going. Thank you so much, and cheers. Well, I'll answer this one. Jeremy, we are going to go with Kajabi. Teachable is great, too, and I think you wouldn't go wrong with either one of those. I don't recall off the top of my head what Teachable costs, but I think it's about the same as Kajabi. The reason that they charge a lot for this stuff, if you recall our webinar on pricing, we basically said you should charge based on value. You should charge your clients the value you are adding to their business. Kajabi and Teachable, so for those who don't know, these are platforms that host online courses. They know that we are making a lot of profit off of this. So I think Kajabi is like $100 a month for the tier that we're on. They know we're making or hope to make more than $100 a month off this. So why should they charge us less? Why should they charge us $1 a month for something that we're going to use to hopefully make much more than that? So that is why they charge a lot. I think that Teachable, Kajabi, and then there's a bunch of WordPress options out there. The WordPress options are cheaper, but they are quite a hassle, so I would suggest avoiding those. If possible, go with Teachable or Kajabi, in my opinion.
Well said. I don't think we have any more questions unless we missed something. Finn, am I missing anything here?
No, I think that's about it. So we'll close it out. Thank you so much to everybody who showed up for this one. We'll be back next week with another episode of Punk Rock MBA Live, number 5, on a topic that we haven't decided on yet, but it's going to be great, so you should definitely show up. And again, if you like what you're seeing here, then please stay tuned for our upcoming DIY marketing class for creatives. It's called Sell It Without Selling Out. You can sign up right now to be notified when the class is available for pre-order. If you go to sellitwithoutsellingout.com, then you'll be the first to know when it's out, and you will get access to special pre-order pricing. It'll be the cheapest you'll ever be able to get it. So I encourage you to go over there, sign up, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys.